The millionaire CEO blew out her candles alone until her new driver offered her company. Before we start, leave a comment and tell us which city you're watching from. And don't forget to rate the story from 0 to 10 at the end. Enjoy the story. To the world, the name Isabella Rossi was synonymous with power. Her face, sharp and intelligent, was currently on the cover of Forbes under the headline, "The $10 Billion Mind." From her panoramic office on the 80th floor, she commanded a global tech empire with the precision of a chess grandmaster. But as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Los Angeles skyline, a small cold notification glowed on her monitor. 28th birthday. It was a secret hidden in plain sight, a detail about the woman that was completely irrelevant to the CEO. The day had been a relentless series of meetings, each one a blur of spreadsheets, projections, and impassive faces. Her COO, Marcus Vance, had spent an hour in her office, his voice a monotone drone as he detailed Q4 growth strategies. He looked at her, but he saw only the company's bottom line. He didn't see the flicker of hope in her eyes each time the door opened. He didn't notice that she was quieter than usual. He saw the CEO, not the woman. To him, October 2nd was just another day for profit. Downstairs, in the gleaming, sterile lobby, Liam O'Connell sat in the driver's seat of the polished sedan, reading a worn copy of a classic novel. He had been her driver for just over a month, a silent observer of her hermetically sealed life. He saw the way executives flinched when she entered a room, the way no one ever asked about her weekend. He saw a queen in a castle of glass, protected by walls of her own making. His observations were confirmed in a brief, telling moment. Isabella's assistant, a woman as ruthlessly efficient as her boss, came down to the car to hand him a tablet with an updated evening schedule. As she did, her phone buzzed. She answered with a clipped, professional tone. "This is Chloe," she said. A pause. "I'm sorry, I can't put you through. Miss Rossi is in back-to-back meetings all day." "I understand, but she has a strict no personal deliveries policy, floral or otherwise." Another pause. Longer this time. "Yes," the assistant sighed, a crack in her robotic facade. "Yes, I am aware of what day it is. Please, just send your well wishes in an email. She'll receive it at the end of the day." She hung up, her face a mask of indifference once more. "She'll be down at 7 p.m. sharp, Liam." Liam simply nodded, but his eyes followed the assistant as she walked away. He glanced up at the glittering tower stretching into the sky. So it was true. The fortress was impenetrable, even to birthday flowers. A profound sadness settled in him. He thought of his own mother, whose hospital room he filled with simple, hand-picked flowers from his small garden. He couldn't imagine a world so starved of that simple human connection. At 7 p.m. sharp, the workday was over. The offices emptied, the hum of productivity replaced by an oppressive silence. Isabella was alone. She walked to the vast window looking down at the river of headlights flowing across the city. Each light was taking someone home to a family, to a loved one, to a life. She checked her personal phone. The screen was dark. No calls, no texts. Not from her estranged father, not from the college friends she'd lost touch with years ago. The silence of her office was no longer a symbol of power. It was an accusation. It screamed a truth she had ignored for years. She had successfully built an empire, but in the process, she had erased herself. A surge of defiant energy shot through her. She would not go to her empty penthouse. She would not surrender to the silence. She grabbed the intercom, her voice firm, leaving no room for questions. "Liam, commanded, "Take me to Celeste." There was a brief pause on the intercom. Liam's voice, when it came back, betrayed nothing but calm professionalism. "Of course, Miss Rossi." But as he put the car in drive, he knew. He knew Celeste was a place for proposals, anniversaries, and milestone birthdays. He knew she was going alone on the one day of the year she shouldn't be. His heart ached for the woman who was about to wage a war against loneliness in the worst possible arena.
The restaurant was a symphony of warmth and happiness. Soft piano music mingled with the clinking of wine glasses and joyful chatter. The hostess gave Isabella a polite, pitying smile that cut deeper than any insult. "A table for one, ma'am?" Isabella was seated at a small table nestled between a couple celebrating their anniversary and a family laughing over a shared dessert. She was an island of silence in a sea of connection. She ordered the most expensive items on the menu: oysters, filet mignon, a vintage red wine, but it all tasted like ash. She watched the other patrons, studying their smiles, their easy intimacy. It felt like watching a foreign film without subtitles. Finally, for the grand finale of her self-inflicted ritual, she ordered the chocolate lava cake. "And," she added, her voice barely a whisper, forcing a smile at the young waiter, "could you possibly put a single candle in it? It's a small, private celebration." The waiter's eyes widened with a flicker of awkward sympathy before he nodded. "Of course, ma'am." The cake arrived, the single candle lit, its small flame flickering in the air-conditioned breeze. All around her, life went on. No one noticed the billionaire CEO sitting alone, paralyzed by the sheer public spectacle of her own loneliness. She stared at the flame, unable to move, unable to breathe. This was infinitely worse than her office. This was a nightmare of her own creation. Outside, Liam had been waiting for nearly an hour. A knot of concern tightened in his stomach. He saw patrons leaving, happy and laughing, but not her. A deep, instinctive worry took over. Breaking protocol, he got out of the car and walked to the restaurant's ornate entrance, peering discreetly through the large glass window. And then he saw her. He saw her sitting alone, rigid, staring at a dessert with a single candle. He didn't see a CEO. He saw a woman completely lost, drowning in a room full of people. His mind screamed at him, "This is not your place. You will be fired. This is the biggest mistake of your career." But then a stronger voice, the voice of his mother, the voice of his own conscience, spoke louder. No one should ever look that alone. He turned around, went to the passenger seat of the car, and retrieved the small white box he had bought earlier that day. Taking a deep breath that did little to calm his racing heart, he walked into the restaurant. The hostess immediately moved to intercept him, her eyes flicking over his simple driver's uniform with disdain. "Sir, can I help you?" "I'm with Ms. Rossi," he said, his voice steady, nodding toward Isabella's table. He didn't wait for a response. He walked purposefully through the maze of tables, his gaze locked on her. Isabella heard the footsteps approach and looked up expecting a waiter. Her eyes widened in disbelief, and a jolt of pure horror went through her. It was Liam, here, walking toward her table. Her first reaction was a hot flash of anger and humiliation. What is he doing? Is he insane? He stopped beside her table. The entire restaurant seemed to fade away. "Liam," she whispered, her voice laced with fury, "what on earth do you think you're doing?" He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed the small white box on the table. He opened it, revealing the humble bakery cupcake with its rainbow sprinkles. He placed it right beside her untouched gourmet lava cake. The contrast was staggering. "Ms. Rossi, Isabella," he said, his voice low and sincere, meant only for her. "You can fire me as soon as we get in the car, but I couldn't just sit out there and watch. I saw you, and, well, my mom always used to say that a shared cupcake is better than a whole cake eaten alone."
Her anger vanished in an instant, replaced by a wave of stunned silence. He had risked his job. He had walked into this temple of wealth and status, wearing his uniform like a badge of honor, all for her. He hadn't come to pity her. He had come to join her. He wasn't saving her from loneliness. He was offering to share it. She looked at the fancy, expensive cake, a monument to her failure. Then she looked at his simple cupcake, an offering of pure, unadulterated kindness. The first sob broke free, a raw, ragged sound she couldn't contain. Tears she had held back for a decade began to fall freely. Without a word, she gestured with a trembling hand to the empty chair across from her. Liam sat down. The other patrons stared, whispering, but neither of them noticed. He pushed the lava cake gently aside, centered the small cupcake between them, and held out his lighter. "No one else matters," he said softly, his eyes meeting hers. "Let's give you a real birthday." Isabella looked at the small, steady flame on the humble cupcake. It was brighter and warmer than anything she had felt all day. Around them, the whispers and stares of the other diners created a dull hum. But in that moment, at that table, there were only two people in the world. With a shaky breath, she closed her tear-filled eyes. She didn't wish for more money, or a new acquisition, or a higher stock price. She wished for a feeling, the feeling of this exact moment. She wished for more. She leaned forward and gently blew. The flame vanished, leaving a thin curl of sweet-smelling smoke. A fragile, genuine smile touched her lips for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. "Thank you, Liam," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Everyone deserves a wish," he answered simply. He broke the small cupcake in half with a surprising neatness and slid a piece toward her on a clean napkin. She didn't hesitate. She picked it up and ate it. The simple chocolate and sugar was the most delicious thing she'd ever tasted. It tasted like kindness. It was a perfect, impossible moment, and perfect, impossible moments are never allowed to last. "Isabella, I thought that was you." The voice was slick and sharp, cutting through their fragile peace like a shard of glass. Both of them looked up. Standing over their table was Marcus Vance, her COO, his face a mask of polite concern that didn't quite hide the smug curiosity in his eyes. His gaze swept the scene. Isabella, her eyes red from crying, the untouched, expensive lava cake pushed to the side, the half-eaten, cheap cupcake between them, and Liam, in his driver's uniform, sitting in a chair that should have been occupied by a fellow titan of industry. "Marcus," Isabella said, her voice regaining a sliver of its corporate steel. She instinctively straightened her back. "I was having dinner with the board members from Nakatomi. When I saw you, I thought I should come over. Is everything all right? Is this man bothering you?" The condescension in his voice was thick. He didn't even look at Liam as a person, dismissing him as a piece of furniture that was in the wrong place. The implication was clear. The only reason a man like Liam would be sitting with a woman like Isabella was if he was causing a problem. Liam felt a chill run down his spine. He prepared to stand up, to apologize, to disappear, and accept his fate. But before he could move, Isabella answered. "Everything is perfectly fine, Marcus," she said, her voice regaining a sliver of its corporate steel. She looked directly at Liam, a silent message passing between them, and then back to her COO. "Liam is here with me, as my guest." The word guest hung in the air, charged with 1,000 meanings. It was a declaration. It was a rebellion. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. His polite mask fell away for a second, revealing a flash of genuine shock, which was quickly replaced by a venomous, knowing smirk. He saw this not as an act of humanity, but as a fatal crack in her armor, a weakness he could exploit. "Your guest," he repeated slowly, savoring the word. "I see. How progressive of you." He gave a lingering, dismissive up-and-down look at Liam. "Well, I won't interrupt your celebration." He leaned closer to Isabella. his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "Just be careful, Isabella. The board values a leader with impeccable judgment in all areas of their life." It was a threat, wrapped in a thin veil of corporate concern. Without another word, he straightened his tie, gave them a final triumphant smirk, and walked away, leaving a toxic silence in his wake.
The bubble was gone. The magic had vanished, replaced by the cold, hard reality of what had just happened. Liam's heroic act had been twisted into a weapon that could be used against her. The drive back to her penthouse was suffocating. The earlier silence had been heavy with unspoken emotions. This new silence was filled with regret and fear. Liam gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. His inner voice was a chorus of self-recrimination. "You fool. You absolute fool. You didn't help her. You exposed her. You gave her enemy a weapon. You should have stayed in the car." He had tried to offer a moment of comfort and had instead started a war he could never help her win. Isabella stared out the window, lost in her own thoughts. She wasn't angry at him. She was terrified. Marcus was ambitious and cunning. He would use this. He would twist it. He would paint her as unstable, erratic, and unfit to lead. When they arrived at the soaring entrance to a private residence, the professional roles slammed back into place with a painful jolt. "Thank you, Liam," she said formally, her voice distant. "That will be all for tonight." He could only nod, his throat too tight to speak. "Good night, Miss Rossi." She got out of the car and disappeared into the building without looking back, leaving him alone in the quiet sedan, the sweet smell of the cupcake now replaced by the bitter taste of failure. His good deed had just become the worst mistake of his life. Isabella stepped into her penthouse, and the silence that greeted her was no longer just empty. It was menacing. The sprawling, multi-million-dollar apartment, with its museum-quality art and floor-to-ceiling windows, felt like a pristine cage. She walked past a framed photograph on a marble console table. It was of her and her father, taken years ago on the day he handed her the keys to the company. His expression was stern, proud. "Don't ever let them see you bleed, Bella," he had told her. "In our world, vulnerability is a death sentence." Tonight, she hadn't just bled, she had wept in front of an employee. She poured herself a glass of whiskey, the amber liquid doing nothing to warm the chill in her bones. As she stood looking out at the city she owned, her phone buzzed with an email notification. The sender was Marcus Vance. The subject line was cold and efficient, "Urgent board consultation." Her heart hammered against her ribs as she read the body of the message. It was drafted with surgical precision, the language polite, the implication lethal. In light of recent events which may call into question executive decorum and judgment, several board members and I feel it is imperative to convene tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to discuss the company's leadership and public image moving forward. The threat was no longer veiled. It was a formal summons, a corporate guillotine being sharpened just for her. Her father's words echoed in her ears, a death sentence. Miles away, Liam unlocked the door to his own small apartment. The contrast was stark. The air here was warm, filled with the scent of old books and his mother's lavender potpourri. He moved quietly to a small bedroom, peeking inside. His mother was sleeping peacefully, a gentle rhythm coming from the oxygen machine beside her bed. The sight of her, so fragile and so dependent on him, made the weight in his gut feel 10 times heavier. This job, with its steady, high-paying salary, was the only thing keeping this fragile peace intact. He sat down at his old wooden desk, where a half-finished manuscript lay beside a worn-out typewriter. He was a writer, a man who believed in the power of stories, in the triumph of the human heart. But tonight, his own story felt like a tragedy of errors. He replayed the evening again and again, but the warmth of the shared moment was now completely eclipsed by the memory of Marcus Vance's predatory smile. His mother's favorite saying ran through his head, "Kindness, Liam,
is the only investment that never fails. For the first time in his life, he wondered if his mother was wrong. His single act of kindness hadn't been an investment, it had been a bomb, and he had just handed it to Isabella's worst enemy. He buried his face in his hands, the weight of his failure crushing him.
The next morning, Liam arrived for work a full hour early, his stomach churning with dread. He stood by the sedan, waiting, rehearsing the apology he knew he'd have to make. But it wasn't Isabella who met him in the private garage. It was Chloe, her assistant, accompanied by a stern-faced man from Human Resources. "Mr. O'Connell," the HR man began, his voice devoid of any emotion, "there has been a review of evening protocol. Ms. Rossi's transportation needs will be handled by an internal security team for the foreseeable future." "Am I being fired?" Liam asked, his own voice sounding distant to his ears. "You are on paid administrative leave pending a full investigation into last night's breach of conduct," Chloe said, avoiding his eyes. "We'll need the car keys and your security credentials." It was a sterile corporate execution. There was no discussion, no chance to explain. He was being erased. He handed over the keys, the weight of them feeling like a judgment. As he walked out of the garage, stripped of his job and his dignity, he felt a profound sense of failure. He had reached out to save someone from drowning, and in doing so, had been pulled under himself. At that exact moment, on the 80th floor, Isabella stood before the imposing double doors of the boardroom. She was dressed in a razor-sharp dark gray suit, her armor. Her face was set like stone, revealing nothing of the storm raging inside her. As she approached, Marcus Vance stepped out from a nearby alcove, a smug, confident smile on his face. He thought he had her cornered. He thought he had won. "Isabella," he said smoothly, "ready for our little chat?" She ignored him, her eyes fixed on the doors. She took a deep breath, the ghost of her father's warning echoing one last time. Then she pushed the doors open and walked into the lion's den, utterly and completely alone. The boardroom was a chamber of judgment. A long, polished mahogany table reflected the grim faces of the 12 board members, a council of old money and ruthless corporate power. They were Marcus's jury, and Isabella was on trial. She took her seat at the head of the table, her face an unreadable mask. Marcus began, his voice oozing with false sincerity. "Thank you for gathering on such short notice. It is with a heavy heart that I bring this matter to your attention." He spoke of duty to the shareholders and protecting the company's integrity. Then, with a click of a button, an image flashed onto the large screen at the end of the room. It was a security photo from the restaurant, grainy but undeniable. It showed Isabella at the table, her face in her hands, tears visible, and sitting across from her, in his driver's uniform, was Liam.
"This photo was taken last night," Marcus announced, his voice ringing with theatrical gravity. "Our CEO, a leader we depend on for stability and unwavering strength, in a state of public emotional collapse, engaging in a shocking breach of protocol with a subordinate employee. This demonstrates a disturbing lack of judgment, an emotional volatility that could put the upcoming Nakamura deal, and indeed the entire company, at risk." He let the image sink in. "I am therefore proposing, for the good of the company, that Isabella take a temporary leave of absence to recover. I will, of course, be prepared to step in as interim CEO." The room was silent. The board members shifted uncomfortably, looking from the damning photo to Isabella. They saw liability, a problem to be managed. They waited for her to deny it, to fight back, to make excuses. Isabella was silent for a full minute. She looked at the photo on the screen. She saw her tears,
her despair. She remembered her father's voice, "Don't ever let them see you bleed." But then she remembered the warmth of the small candle, the taste of the shared cupcake, the feeling of a stranger's impossible kindness. For the first time, she realized her father had been wrong. Her humanity wasn't a liability. It was the only thing she had left. She stood up, her movements calm and deliberate. "You are right about one thing, Marcus," she began, her voice clear and steady, cutting through the tension. "That photo does show a woman at her breaking point." The board members leaned forward. "Yesterday was my 28th birthday." A flicker of surprise crossed some of their faces. "And in this entire company, this $10 billion empire I have built, not a single person remembered. I spent the day in meetings, looking at spreadsheets, generating profit for all of you, and I was completely invisible. So yes, when the day was over, I felt a profound sense of emptiness. I went to a restaurant, alone, hoping to feel something other than the crushing weight of my own success." She owned the story. She wasn't ashamed. She was telling the truth. "And then," she said, her voice softening as she looked at the image of Liam, "the man you see in this photo, my driver, Liam O'Connell, did something that no one else in this company had the courage or the decency to do. He saw a fellow human being in pain, and he chose to be kind." She turned her gaze on the board, her eyes flashing with a fire they had never seen before. "You talk about a breach of protocol. I'll tell you about a breach. A company that celebrates profit but punishes kindness is in breach of its humanity. A company whose executives see a moment like this and smell blood instead of offering help is in breach of its soul. You want to talk about fitness to lead. Liam O'Connell showed more leadership in that one moment than I have seen in this boardroom in 5 years. He didn't see a subordinate. He saw a person. And you, Marcus," she said, locking eyes with him, "you saw an opportunity. That is the difference between a leader and a vulture." Marcus was pale, sputtering. "This is an absurd, emotional outburst. She's proving my point." "Am I? Or am I proving that this company's culture, the culture you thrive in, is what's truly broken?" "That's enough," a quiet voice said from the far end of the table. It was Mr. Chen, a quiet, elderly board member who had been a close friend of her father for 40 years. He rarely spoke, but when he did, everyone listened. "I too was at Celeste last night," Mr. Chen said calmly, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "I was with the gentleman from Nakatomi. I saw the entire thing." The blood drained from Marcus's face. "I saw Miss Rossi sitting alone. I saw her employee approach with what looked like a simple, kind gesture. And then, Marcus, I saw you approach her table. I saw you lean in. I saw the look on her face change from relief to fear. I saw you threaten her. I looked around at the stunned faces of the other board members. This wasn't a discovery. This was a setup. A pathetic, dishonorable attempt at a corporate coup." The silence was deafening. Marcus Vance was exposed, his ambition laid bare for all to see. Mr. Chen stood up. "I make a motion for a vote of no confidence in our COO, Marcus Vance, and for his immediate termination." "Seconded," another board member called out instantly. "All in favor." A forest of hands went up around the table. It was unanimous. Marcus stared, his mouth agape, as security was called to escort him from the room, his empire of whispers and shadows crumbling around him. Isabella stood at the head of the table, not just the CEO, but the leader they never knew she could be. She had won, not by being colder, but by finally allowing herself to be warm. She looked at Mr. Chen, a deep, grateful nod passing between them. Then she addressed the room. The first order of business for our new company culture is to correct a mistake. An investigation was opened this morning into an employee's conduct. That investigation is now closed. She pulled out her phone. And my second order of business is to create a new senior leadership position, one this company desperately needs. She smiled, a real, radiant smile. I have to make a call to offer someone a job. Liam sat in his small apartment, the termination disguised as administrative leave, feeling like a physical weight on his chest. He was scrolling through job listings for driving positions, each one feeling like a step backward. His dream of writing, of making a difference, felt further away than ever. He had failed. He had lost his job, and in his mind, he had failed Isabella, too. Then his phone rang. The caller ID was an unlisted number from the Rossi Enterprises switchboard. He braced himself for the final, official blow. He answered, his voice flat. Hello? Liam, it's Isabella.
Her voice was different. It was warm, clear, and completely devoid of the corporate armor she usually wore. He was so stunned he couldn't speak. "Liam, are you there?" she asked, a hint of concern in her tone. "Yes, Miss Rossi, I'm here," he finally managed to say. "Listen, about last night, I am so sorry. I never should have overstepped. It was unprofessional, and No," she cut him off, her voice firm but gentle. "You stop right there. You have nothing to apologize for. What you did last night, it wasn't unprofessional. It was human. You showed more courage and integrity than anyone I've ever employed." She took a breath. "The first thing I did after our board meeting was close the investigation against you. The second thing I'm doing is this phone call." Liam was confused. I don't understand." "I have a job offer for you, Liam, and it's not to be my driver. As of today, the position of company COO is vacant, but I'm not looking to fill it with another Marcus. I'm creating a new role. I want to offer you the position of Vice President of People and Culture." The silence on the line was absolute. Liam thought it had to be a cruel joke. "Me? Miss Rossi, Isabella, I'm a driver. I write stories on an old typewriter. I don't have an MBA. I don't know the first thing about being an executive." "You know the first thing about being a person. You know how to see people, how to listen to them, and how to tell a story. That's what a culture is, Liam. It's the story a company tells about itself. For years, our story has been about profit at all costs. I want our new story to be about people. I don't need another suit who can read a spreadsheet. I need a heart. I need you." He was speechless, completely overwhelmed. "The position comes with a salary that will ensure your mother receives the best medical care in the country for as long as she needs it. And Rossi Enterprises is also establishing a grant for promising local authors. The first recipient will be you, fully funding the completion and publication of your next novel." Tears welled in Liam's eyes. This wasn't just a job offer. This was a life raft. This was a dream. I accept," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Thank you, Isabella." "No, Liam," she said, and you could hear the radiant smile in her voice. "Thank you." 1 year later, the 80th floor of Rossi Enterprises was unrecognizable. The cold, sterile silence had been replaced by a low, energetic buzz. The stark white walls now featured art from local artists, and green plants brought life to every corner. The culture had been transformed from the inside out.
Liam, dressed in a comfortable blazer and jeans, stood before a group of new hires. He wasn't talking about quarterly earnings. He was telling a story about a lonely birthday and a shared cupcake. He spoke about how the company's greatest asset wasn't its code, but its kindness. He was a natural, his words resonating with an authenticity that no corporate training manual could ever replicate.
Isabella watched from the doorway, a proud, genuine smile on her face. Her employees no longer feared her, they respected her. They brought her their ideas, their problems, their stories. She was no longer just a CEO, she was their leader. She caught Liam's eye as he finished, and he smiled back, a look of deep, shared understanding passing between them. Later that day, on October 2nd, there was no fancy restaurant, no soulless corporate cake. Isabella and Liam sat at a small, slightly wobbly table in the corner of a neighborhood bakery, the very one his cupcake had come from a year ago. The place was warm, filled with the smell of fresh bread and coffee. Between them on the table sat a single chocolate cupcake with rainbow sprinkles. Liam lit the one candle, its small flame dancing in Isabella's bright, happy eyes. "So," he asked softly, "what are you wishing for this year?" Isabella looked from the flame to his face, her heart full. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. "Nothing," she said, her voice a happy whisper. "I already have everything I could ever wish for." She leaned forward and blew out the candle. Isabella Rossi learned that true wealth isn't measured in a stock portfolio, but in moments of shared humanity. And Liam O'Connell learned that a single act of kindness, no matter how small, can be the catalyst that changes the world. What do you think is the most important quality a true leader should have? Share your thoughts in the comments below.